This is our 212th meeting since we started. February of 2009. Can you hear me all right?
Not real loud.
You can hear me. That's an important thing.
It's a little loud around here.
All right. Well, we don't want to overdo it. But anyway.
We need a glass glass.
Don't quiet down. That's how it is, yeah. It takes a little while for people to get cut in. You know.
Very kind.
Anyway, we put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require our speakers to take a position on an issue, express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give our speaker an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. And if anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter that it's one of our rules. We only listen to one fool at a time. You know, that's one of our rules. We live up to that. And then we have questions and answers, not speeches from the audience. And then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience gets 5 minutes at the podium to respond to what the speaker said for or against. And the speaker gets a comment and close the meeting. One other rule we have is that there are no personal attacks. Attack the subject, don't kill the messenger. That's the main thing. So remember that and keep it civil. So anyway, before we go any further though, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. Everybody has announcements? Get them out of the way. You know, you got something you want other people to know. Now's the time to do it. You got an announcement here? Jim has an announcement. Okay.
As soon as I swallow. Well, welcome tonight. We're glad to see all of you here this evening. How many of you are here for the first time for one of our meetings? Anybody? Hasn't been before? Okay. Well, that's great. We really appreciate the hospitality of Barbex, and I'll say a couple of things about that I usually do. And that is, Tom puts on the meeting notice that we all want to come and spend some money. Don't just come and sit on a seat and listen to the speaker and give Tom $3. But we're taking up their space and we're paying for the people to be here, and we want to be sure we take good care of them. Ray was talking to someone here in the restaurant this week, and our total purchases have been averaging about $150. And we've been averaging about 25 people here. We might have 30 here tonight. I haven't counted. But we don't need to do much more, and I haven't been really going around and seeing who's eating a big plate of food and who's eating a little snack, a dessert and a drink, who's not eating at all. But most of you have been ordering adequately, and if you haven't, please join the party, because they charge us no fee for using the room, which we appreciate. A lot of the places do require that, and if they were, then we'd have to make a larger contribution to the bucket to pay the restaurant fee and to pay for the speaker and their guest, spouse, whatever they bring with them. Meal, we do that, and Tom pays for all the printing and the paper and the listing on the computer, on the internet, blah, 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 blah. So he runs it pretty frugally. We don't blow money off, so at least be generous with what you do. And we want to keep the restaurant happy and satisfied. Be generous with the servers, because we all come in and order at the same time. We don't have 30 of us trickling in over a period of an hour and a half or 2 hours like would typically happen out in the restaurant. So they do a pretty good job of getting them all ordered and getting it out of the kitchen and getting it out to us. So we appreciate that. So I get tired of lecturing about that. I don't want to do it, I don't even want to say anything about it, guys. But if I don't remind you and it stays low, then we have a problem on our hands. So please indulge me, and please take it into account with your own thing. Now, Tom's over here eating, and I'm just going to tell him I'm shutting up and chew that last bite and swallow it and come and introduce the program, and we'll carry on from here. Welcome again tonight. Is anybody, oh, wait, let me ask you one question. Is anybody not getting an email notice of our meetings? Okay. Tom, give her a piece of paper to write her email address on, and we'll get her added into the computer system so that she can get that notice out.
Want to be added in?
If anybody else wants that, well then get your hands on the pad and we'll add you on. Thanks again, guys.
Tom, at this time when you say announcements, what if we have another event that's coming up?
Fine.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Now's the time to do
That's
it.
the time to do it.
Not later on.
Okay.
We don't want to interfere with the speaker. Got an announcement? Make it.
Okay, I'm Regina, and we have Activists for Truth, and we meet every Monday at 7 o'clock at La Madeleine, that's on Mockingbird. It's 3072 Mockingbird. I have a little flyer to hand out about it, and we're from 7 to 9. And this Monday, we have topical things we talk about, and it's going to be getting fluoride out of the water in Dallas. So maybe Tom will let me talk about that one of these days. We have several different topics, but that's just what we're going to talk about on Monday. So it's La Madeleine on Mockingbird from 7 to 9 every Monday. Thank
By
you.
Central.
Oh, Central. Next, on the west side of Central, next to SMU.
Next to the stadium.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
No, it's not Central Time. Any other announcements? That's it? Okay. I've got one here. Next week is where John Beasley, he's sitting right there. He'll be our speaker next week. He's an English-born author, retired from a long career with Xerox. He's educated at London's Imperial College, University of Dallas, MBA, DIC, PhD. We'll discuss how currently there are many conspiracy notions about being floating about, yet most of the critical non-conspiracy is one that most affect our lives and futures, the general American public, which is referred to on the back cover of his book, which he wrote, Sabotaging America, stating the financial crisis that erupted in September 2008 is a symptom of a far larger problem facing America. The ideology that has guided policy decisions for the past 60 years rests on concepts that bear no relation to the actual economic conditions which the U.S. now finds itself. Such arrangements suit the elite fund for political class in Washington. In effect, the ruling elite is sabotaged by the future of America for its own enrichment. John will show how this American self-inflicted tragedy started with FDR, has continued with every president since, and how the failed international macroeconomic policies pursued by these administrations cannot be regarded as a conspiracy, since each faltering step was widely publicized. It will cover political decisions, their general repercussions, and where we need to go from here. So that's next week, and it's also on your itinerary that you have in front of you. So tonight we're privileged to have Jim and Joanne Moriarty. They're going to talk about escape from Al-Qaeda and where to go from here. They're American patriots who lived in Libya years prior and during the airstrikes in 2011. They're going to discuss being captured by escaping from Al-Qaeda, the truth about the NATO strikes, the fall of Gaddafi in Libya, the turmoil in Egypt and Syria, who's behind it, the facts surrounding 9/11 attack in Benghazi, and where we need to go from here. Note, rather than hide in the shadows and directed by U.S. agencies, Jim and Joanne Moriarty have been chosen to tell other Americans the truth about our government's involvement and the corruption that exists in our dealings with other countries. At personal risk, complete financial destruction, they are speaking out. So, without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Jim and Joanne Moriarty. You have the floor. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Jimmy. This is Joanne.
Good evening.
First of all, we're not political activists. We're business folks. And we had a very successful business. We make a proprietary product that rejuvenates oil wells and cleans up pipelines and sludge pits. And we were really in the environmental remediation business more than anything. We had two big factories in China. We couldn't get the Chinese to pay us properly. And so we were looking for new areas to exploit our technology. We had a huge contract pending in Kuwait to clean up all the naturally occurring radioactive material all the naturally occurring radioactive material in Kuwait with one of the princes there. That was about $1 billion project, would have been a couple $100 million of our product. And on our way to Kuwait, we thought we'd stop off in Libya. This was in early 2007, just after the treaty was signed in 2006 that allowed businesses to go back into Libya. All the restrictions were removed and everything. And we went to Libya for 5 days, really. I bought Joanne a bushel basket of headscarves because we didn't know what kind of trouble we were going to be getting into there. And
It's just right after Libya opened.
yeah, right after that, we were the first non-government sponsored company to go into Libya, and we arrived there on the 1st of January 2007. The only way we got into Libya that early was Joanne had a longtime friend that was in the royal family in England, and he had been doing business in periodicals and stuff in England, and so Lord Andrew got us into Libya. And when we arrived, everything we had heard about Libya was not the truth. Not anything we heard was the truth. I had a full entourage of security people, one at each corner, any place we went. And after 2 days, we said we can send those guys home because we didn't need them. The Libyans were so happy to see us. They smiled. You're from the United States. Oh, we love the United States. We love the people. And can we help you? Do you like our country? And they asked us to stay an extra 10 days in that first trip. We did. Every night we met with a different minister or government official, and they were like sponges. They wanted to know what the outside world was like because they'd really been locked out of everything for 38 years. And so we showed them our technology. They started researching it, and 2 days before we left, they brought in the top reservoir engineer from the National Oil Company, and we signed a contract with them to treat 2,500 monster wells. These wells, the production zone is 1,200 feet thick. In Texas, if we've got a 15-foot thick zone, we think we've cut a fat calf. The amount of enzyme our product needed for those wells was about $1 billion. That's with a B. So we walked out of our first trip into Libya with $1 billion contract in hand. So we were proactive to do whatever it took to comply with the contract conditions on that product. And Joanne's going to tell you now what Libya was like from the first time we went there in 2007 until February of 2011, when the U.S. and NATO and UN decided to blow that country up.
Is this one on? Okay. Libya was the poorest country in Africa until 1968 in the bloodless coup where the tribal leaders appointed Gaddafi to be the leader when the 11 tribes took back their country. In the full history of Libya, they were occupied their entire history until 1968 by other countries. Italy was in there, Rome, Greece, the Phoenicians. It goes way, way back. Italy was in there the same time that the king was there, the old king. He was put in by the UK and the United States by the oil companies because they wanted the oil in Libya. This was right after World War II.
Incidentally, he was a pedophile despot.
Yeah, he was a complete
and
despot.
the Libyan average salary was 60 dinar a year.
That's $50.
That's about $50 prior to the time the bloodless coup threw him out.
Now, the Libyans were workers for the people who occupied their country. They never owned any land, and none of their own land. So when they rose up against this old king, he just ran off. He was a despot. And the Gaddafi, when they appointed him, he gave the land to all the people that were working it. The first time in the history of Libya, the Libyans began to own their own land. And from 1968 to 2011, Gaddafi's regime took Libya to the most prosperous, most progressive country in Africa. The average salary was
$15,800
a year, higher than China, higher than India.
Highest in Africa, higher than China, higher than India.
Yeah, all the people there, if you got married, you got a $46,000 gift from the government.
The day you got married?
The day you got married. Gas was 44 cents a gallon. Your housing was given to you at 10% of the cost of your salary. It's 10% of the salary. So if you made $900 a month, you paid $90, and in
20 years.
20 years it became yours. The hospitalization
that included all the utilities, electricity,
all
water,
utilities.
etc.
Your first car was half of whatever the invoice was. All medical was paid for completely, and if you couldn't get the medical care you needed in Libya, they paid for you to go abroad wherever you could get it, and you were allowed to take a family member with you, and all your costs and expenses were paid.
Travel expenses,
Travel
costs,
expenses,
hospital,
everything.
etc.
If you wanted to go to college, they paid for your complete education as high as your brain would take you, and if you couldn't get it in Libya, they paid for you to get it wherever in the world you wanted to get it. So Libya,
Again, with a stipend.
yeah,
We knew a young man that was getting his doctorate in England. He had a wife and 4 kids. His monthly stipend was £4,950. This is on top of tuition, fees, and books. He got $7,500 a month as a stipend from the government. So, you know, people in Libya had a really good life.
but understand, Libya only had 5.5 million people, the whole entire country, so it wasn't a highly populated country. Big country, but not a lot of population.
The problem with Libya is they had too much money and too much independence and too much freedom for the toilet paper bankers. Libya had $241 billion in cash and cash equivalents in the Fed. They had 150 billion euros in Euroclear. That's over $500 billion. They had $39 billion in cash in Libya. They had 179 tons of gold, 2,000 tons of silver, lots of tons of iridium and rhodium and platinum and other things. They had no debt. They only spent about 48% of their income every year, and the rest of the money went to in infrastructure projects, and they divided out among the people. None of the people in Libya had a debt. If you were such a bad business person and you'd lost all your money, you could go to any storehouse, any government storehouse, and they would give you 50 kilos of rice and 50 kilos of flour and 20 kilos of cheese and milk and money to have an animal slaughtered for your family. And if you had to go back 2 days later, went back, they didn't ask you for credentials or ID or anything. During Ramadan, which is their Christmas season, every man, woman, and child in Libya could go to any bank and receive a 500 dinar gift from the government. That was about $430. So the Libyan people had a really good life. There was a few radicals, probably 5%, that were part of the old King Idris bunch, and they were real radical Islamists, but that was only about 5% of the country.
Most of them were in exile. Most of them didn't live there because the regime that was there, Gaddafi was required to step down in 2006. Most people don't know this, by the treaty that was signed by Condoleezza Rice to open Libya back to the world again. And the Libyan people, as in a general, are all against radical Islamists. They don't like them. They don't want them in their country. They had better security than we have here. They didn't even want beards in their country. Libya was the most progressive Islamic country in the world. Women were emancipated in Libya in 1970. Women never had to wear burqas or headscarves or anything. It was not required. They were doctors and teachers and lawyers, and they actually were in the military. Gaddafi, all his guards were women. So
they owned buildings, they owned companies. In fact, there was not even a beekeeper's outfit shop in Tripoli that we ever saw.
Libya,
so women didn't have to wear burqas.
No, and their divorce laws are actually better than ours for women over there. They had better. They were protected more, and women were incredibly protected. A man could not raise his voice to a woman in Libya. I mean, he would be immediately shot down if he did. There was one time when somebody sent me an email that was the person was trying to steal our business, and they threatened me, and that was enough for the Libyans to just go crazy. They said, this will never happen in this country. We do not allow that.
The court order required that bunch of mafia bad guys. This was the Misrata Mafia, which actually joined hands with the U.S. and NATO to overthrow Libya. But the Misrata Mafia tried to steal our $5 billion worth of business and our technology. And the Libyan courts upheld our rights and entitlements rather than take the position of the local Libyans. And in the court order from the equivalent of the Attorney General in Libya, he said that anybody from the Misrata group could not walk on the same side of the street with us. They could not look us directly in the eye. And if they saw us coming down the street, they had to cross to the other side of the street and divert their eyes. If they ever threatened my wife again, they would throw them all in jail. from top to bottom. They also awarded us an open-ended amount of damages, and this is the Attorney General of the country. He said, you make it any amount you want, because what you're doing for our country is very important. He said, make it $1 million or any amount. So the Libyan courts were very, very friendly, if you would, to foreign companies. That you don't find. And so our ideas about what Libya was is based on truths. They're based on things we saw. So we deal in a straight line. Now, some of the things we're going to tell you, we're sure that a lot of y'all are going to be offended. We don't intend to do that, but we're going to tell you truths about what we know as eyewitnesses about what went on in Libya. And we're talking about after February of 2011. There was no Arab Spring. That was a planned takeover of that country. And the plan had been put in place for many, many years. And we're not going to throw rocks just at Obama. We're going to go back to Clinton and Bush and all of them. The reason that they had to throw over Libya, there were really 4 reasons, but the primary reason was Gaddafi had started the African Bank. That's the gold-backed dinar for the continent of Africa. He was a big African Union guy. And can you imagine a gold-backed international currency? Who in the hell would want the toilet paper that the Federal Reserve and Euroclear is putting out if you could have a gold-backed currency? So for that reason, the oligarchs, the Rothschild group, wanted to kill Gaddafi and shut him up. Second, the United States was bound and determined to have military control of Africa. So they had formed AFRICOM. They are sure that they're going to have a war with China one day, and they wanted to keep the natural resources of Africa away from China. Libya, South Africa, and 4 other countries said, we're not going to give up military control of our country. So for that reason, the United States wanted to kill him and take him out. The third thing was, and you can go back and verify this with Susan Lindauer and other folks who were CIA operatives and knew and worked inside Libya and other places, Libya had nothing to do with Lockerbie. Those were rogue CIA agents that took that plane down because they were dealing in drugs all over the world. And the CIA from the United States, legitimate CIA, had gone into Afghanistan. They'd had these 3 investigators were on that plane. They had their report. They were bringing it back to Washington, D.C. And the reason that all those young people ended up on that plane, they were all on standby, and the CIA instructed the executives of these other countries not to be on that plane. That's why all these college kids were on there on standby. And that plane was shot down, and the reason they could blame Libya is because Libya was a closed shop. They just did not have tourists and things like that, and so
They didn't speak up for themselves.
never
Ever.
did. Even during the blow up of NATO, they didn't speak for themselves. But being an African Union guy, and since Gaddafi had stepped out of power according to that treaty of 2006, he looked at all the treaties that had been broken with all the European countries, and the sanctions had been put on Tripoli, on Gaddafi and Libya, and he combined that in a class action suit for all the violated treaties of the Europeans with African countries, England, United States, Lockerbie, etc., and the class action totaled $7 trillion. He took it to international court, and the attorney said it had legs. So for that reason, the Europeans and the rest of them wanted to get rid of him. Now you had a few tidbits about why in the world did all these folks hate Libya and hate specifically Gaddafi. I'll give you one example. The French and the British had a satellite they put up just for Africa. And this satellite, when it was put into space, cost them about $300 million. They charged the Africans, the African countries, every year $500 million out front for the use of that satellite and a high rate per minute for all the calls. For 14 years, Libya and the African Union had appealed to international bankers to finance the money that it was take to put a satellite up. At that time, $400 million. They kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. After 14 years, Gaddafi put forward $300 million of Libyan money. The African Development Bank put forward 50 and another 28 from another source, and they put up their own satellite. Now that saved them $500 million a year and cut their cost per minute down by 70%. So of course the French didn't like that, were the crap, and neither did the British, because that was their little nest egg they looked at every year. So Gaddafi was not liked because he was doing things for the benefit of his people. Now, I'm sure we've all suffered here in the United States with what's been going on the last 20 years, and we see how our dollar's gone to hell in a tea kettle. Because our government, I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever, our government is not doing what's best for us. So, now then, we'll segue into I left Libya. We signed our joint venture agreements finally with the Social Security Investment Fund, which was one of the 6 Social Security funds in Libya. That was the littlest one at $16 billion. The biggest one was $33 billion. They became our local partner for our enzyme business. And the reason they were the perfect partner for us is because all the pensioners were oil field service workers and managers, and the oil field production companies were pensioners were benefiting from that company. So that not only gave us the proper partner, but gave us the kind of political influence we needed in Libya, where we could stay out of it, they could do the business with all the oil field service companies. I left there on February 8th. On the first week in January, I ordered in sufficient feedstock and materials and everything to build a large-scale enzyme production plant. We put in about $170 million worth of goods and materials and everything into Libya. Arrived about the middle of March. We've never seen or heard anything about all that material. That was taken and stolen by Ms. Rata with the assistance of this government.
It was blown up, probably.
A lot of it was blown up. All the money we had in the bank accounts in Libya, which were substantial since we had to bond all these contracts we were doing, all that money's disappeared. But it's not just our money. I mean, there's $500 billion. When Libya was blown up, that $500 billion disappeared.
And all the money from all the other foreign countries that were in there, like China and France. A lot of them had money in there.
Yeah.
A lot of them had. When they went to the UN and made a decision that they were going to do a no-fly zone over Libya because some protesters had been attacked by Gaddafi, which has completely been now debunked. They know that the snipers were from Qatar. It was a false flag operation. They brought in 250,000 mercenaries under the cover of NATO. These mercenaries were almost all of them Islamic extremists. They came from Afghanistan, they came from Cairo, they came from all over, Yemen, everywhere. And they were being led around on the ground mostly by Blackwater people. They were attacking Libyans everywhere they could, and NATO began bombing the country. NATO began bombing hospitals, schools, water supplies, power plants. They embargoed the city of Tripoli from food, medicine, water, gasoline, because Tripoli was not going along with their deal. 60,000 bombing raids over Libya. Over Libya is more than all of World War II. There's been 500,000 Libyans were killed.
This is a population of 5.5 million. We killed, and I'm talking about the government of the United States, killed 500,000 people
And
under the
NATO.
auspices of
NATO.
protecting innocent civilians. I don't know how that works. 2 million Libyans live in exile. There's 1 million Libyans in the country that are homeless. The other 2 million are living in total anarchy. We started trying to tell this government how wrong-footed we were beginning in February. And we published a lot of articles. We had to learn how to publish because, my gosh, they wanted attribution. If you said anything that wasn't according to the agenda of the press here, they wouldn't put it out. But you can go to Google search and plug in Libyan War: The Truth Part 2. And you'll see the #1 hit on the Google search engine is an article we put out in March of 2011. It's still #1 on the hit parade on Google. So this is not new for us. We've been trying to tell our government how wrong-footed we were. Little did we know it was our government that was the one that was promoting this whole mess.
So,
Go ahead.
okay. So what happened was we were invited to be part of a fact-finding commission to go into Libya to see what was actually happening. We were
To head it.
We were to head it. Yeah. It was the group that invited us is a 2 billion people group. It's a youth organization that's all over the world. And they wanted us to come in May. We were invited in April, and we agreed to do that. And we went in May as a fact-finding commission because the UN, by their own charter, is required to do a fact-finding commission before they take any action in a country. Libya had requested 3 times for a fact-finding commission, and the UN turned a deaf ear. So some outside countries formed some fact-finding commissions to go in. That's how we went back to Libya, and that's how we were there from May until the end of August, the whole time, mostly during the war.
Now, the video that is the results of our fact-finding commission is on our DVD, and it details how that war started and what were the causation and everything. And that is in our PowerPoint is on there. In the PowerPoint, we detail the names and agencies that came into our home at our invitation and debriefed us. That's in there. Our DVD is about 3.5 hours long, and it's full of information that, of course, would be impossible to cover in the time tonight. But we were called back into this to run this fact-finding commission, and we were given, I said, the only way we'll go in there is if we're given free hand to go look any place we want to see what we want to talk to everybody. And he said, sure. And because we knew Libya, but we never did business with Gaddafi or the government or anybody. We were really working more with the tribes and the oil field producers and things like that. And so the things that we heard on the news, if any of them were true, we weren't happy about it. The fact that Gaddafi was firing rockets on his own citizens and using cluster bombs and all these things. Well, when we got to Libya, we found out it was not Gaddafi that was doing any of those things. It was not the Libyan government doing any of those things. It was the UN and NATO, and all the people that were fighting on behalf of the rebels were Al Qaeda, psychopathic murderers, Ansar al-Sharia Muslim Brotherhood, who were brought in by the U.S. 250,000 mercenaries were brought into Libya by the U.S. to hand in hand take over that country. These were Al Qaeda. These were psychopathic murders that the U.S. brought in there. The same kind of mess they did in Egypt. Well, Egypt was a much bigger place, and you saw what happened in Egypt. In less than a year, the people of Egypt rose up and took the government back from Muslim Brotherhood, because Muslim Brotherhood is psychopathic, murdering people that never knew who their father was.
Well, when we got to Tripoli, we began to go and we went to a lot of tribal meetings. We went out and saw a lot of bombed places. We interviewed a lot of people. The Libyan people requested us, because the media that was there, the CNN and all the other media that were there, most of them were CIA. And we knew that because they carried big knives, they had flak jackets, and they even identified themselves that way. The media, the Libyans found out...
To make that clear, the people you saw on CNN and BBC and all those people making reports from Libya,
they were intelligence.
Were all intelligence people. They were not normal broadcasters. The agenda was what they were selling, not the truth.
We became very well known in Libya because we were the only Americans there other than the media people. And the Libyans were looking to us to please put out the truth. Please, we are not wanting our government overthrown. I would have to say at the beginning, maybe 75% of the people were against it, but as it went on, it became in the 90s. We were we attended a rally, pro-Gaddafi, they call it pro-Gaddafi, but it's pro-the Libyan regime, in Green Square, where over 2 million Libyans came out in Tripoli for their government. Now that's more than one third of their entire government. Now they have the right to choose their own government. This is what we were saying. They have the right, and obviously that was not happening. So what happened with us, the tribes had put together a new constitution. They came together in May and they agreed 100% to make a new constitution for Libya. And that's the first time in 100 years the tribes all agreed on anything. On August 17th, that we were sitting with the supreme leader of all the tribes, Sheikh Ali Lahwell, in the Radisson Hotel, and they delivered the new constitution to him right when we were sitting with him. 3 days later, NATO came in and blew up Tripoli. So
it didn't fit the agenda to have the Libyans produce their own constitution. It didn't fit the agenda of the imperialist countries, the United States being the lead, to install a government that was not appointed by them. So the tragic thing is Tripoli was invaded, and in the hotel we had been staying in for months, Corinthia Hotel, right on the Mediterranean, right near the port, and they began to bring in shipload after shipload after shipload
they brought in the black
of these.
helicopters.
Yeah, I forgot that. I'll do that first. We were in the hotel, and one evening late, late 5 or 6 o'clock, we heard these attack helicopters coming in off the Mediterranean with their cannons firing. There was the third one we could hear but couldn't see, and they mowed down every man, woman, and child in the street. In the first hour, they killed 1,300 Libyans and wounded 5,000. These were U.S. attack helicopters.
Under NATO.
Under NATO.
And you
And-
personally witnessed that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. And after that, we would see these streams of these little trucks with anti-aircraft guns. They were pickup trucks, and in the bed of the pickup truck were anti-aircraft guns and 50 caliber machine guns and mini cannons, and just a non-stop stream coming out of the port, flooding into Tripoli, and the bombing and fighting and everything continued in Tripoli non-stop. Finally, on the 23rd, a rescue ship was coming in from Malta, and since our government was not helping us at all, I'm talking about Joanne and myself, were offered no help or assistance from our government. Our families over here were pleading to help us get out of Tripoli. No help. So the Russian ambassador, who we had met there, he put our names on the list to be on that rescue ship, which was coming in to take the remaining politicos out of Tripoli. And we were in the lobby of the hotel, and people heard us speaking English. First was the FIFA soccer coach from Germany. He said, "You're Americans, you're getting out of here. We're going to try." He said, "Can I go with you?" And then next was a Bahraini prince. Next was the sister of the president of Mauritania. And then a Filipino gal that had been working in that hotel for 20 years. And then there was a ne'er-do-well from Texas that was over there trying to sell guns or influence or whatever. And he wanted to go with us. So that was our crew. And we had the Russian ambassador add their names to the list. Then we went to try to find this ship to get on the ship, of course. And we didn't know that the rebels had fired, Al-Qaeda had fired on that ship and wouldn't let it come into port. So it was moored 3 miles out. And we're going up and down the coast, 42 miles away from Tripoli, east, a stop point every 100 meters with Al-Qaeda, armed rebel psychopathic bastards.
Long beards.
They were firing in the air, and the hotel had loaned us their van, and so there was a hotel driver and the guy riding shotgun was there, and they told these rebels, these Al-Qaeda killers, that we were news media. So they liked that because the media had been lying for them for Allah Akbar, bam, bam, bam. And one of them got so excited he shot down to the ground beside the van, knocked the back window out, and all of us were trying to find some place to change our underwear. And but long and short, this is back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, after about 5 hours of this mess, we went back into the port of Tripoli the second time, and that time we were held inside the port for about an hour. And then all of a sudden, dozens of these little pickup trucks circled us, AK-47s pointed at us. One big, tall, hard-looking guy spoke a little English, had our names on a list, and he said, "We know who you are, your game is up." And they took us to their torture center. And we were there a long time. They kept us in the lobby of the hotel. They'd taken over a hotel, no electricity, no food, no water, nothing there. And the only thing they had working was an elevator. And they were dragging these poor Libyan soldiers that were wounded, take them up to the mezzanine area of this hotel. And we heard sounds from human beings that we never thought anyone could make. And we were there a long time. And in the end, they went and videotaped each one of us individually. Had a British film crew there, videotaping each one of us individually, and they asked us, "Have you been treated well? Have you been injured? Are you in good shape?" And we, of course, answered yes. And then the reason they were videotaping us because they had set up a kill zone 2 blocks away, and they're going to kill us and blame it on Gaddafi. We didn't know that then. But then, after they'd finished that, then this big, tall, bald-headed, bearded, fat piece of garbage imam for Al-Qaeda and the imam for Tripoli came in, looked down his nose at us, and what he said in Arabic was, "Kill them, chop them up, and burn them, and blame it on Gaddafi." Well, I didn't know how much trouble I was in. I've never been accused of being very smart, and I was demanding to get our passports back. I said, we're U.S. citizens. We've been helping you all. If you damage us, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Give us our passports back. Give us our passports back. And those that spoke Arabic were all white. They were ashen. They were white. They were scared to death. This is the sister of the president of Mauritania, the Bahraini prince.
That was the one
Yeah,
too.
and so when they finally decided to give us our passports back, the man that came in from our hotel and exchanged the position of the driver of the van, we'd seen him. His English was perfect. He was the IT guy at our hotel. He was never really very friendly, and that was unusual for Libyans because they're always very friendly. But he came over there to drive the van back, and he said, I'm taking the van back to the hotel. And I said, no, we're getting out of this godforsaken country. We're going the other direction to the rescue ship. And he took Joanne over the side and he said, listen, I've gotten to know you and your husband. You're good people. You're just here trying to help Libya. But if you go the direction you want to go east, they set up a kill zone over there, and they're going to kill you and chop you up and burn you. And he said, I think I can go the other way back to our hotel, which would have been west. And he said, I think I can take the back roads and get you back to the hotel. And she said, you better tell Jimmy that. He told me that, and I said, gosh, we're going back to the hotel. And he said, we have to pay off the murders because they're being paid by the U.S. 2,500 dinar to kill you and another 1,000 dinar to chop you up and burn you. And that was dinar. And I'm the only guy of our group that had any money. We had $19,800 left. And that money represented a little more money than they were going to be paid to kill us. But we weren't leaving Libya, so they knew they were going to have another shot. So this young man from the hotel, at risk to his life, because I can tell you, as an Al-Qaeda sympathizer, if you look cross-eyed, they will kill you and chop your head off. If you do anything against what their wishes are, you're dead. So this man risked his life to help us.
That was our first miracle.
That was our first miracle. And then he took us back to the hotel. We got back in there. The next miracle that happened, and I'm telling you, we got out of there with 3 miracles. Nobody gets out of Al-Qaeda's hands alive, especially when we were on their kill list. And we were on their kill list because we had the audacity to tell the Libyan people that they had the right to determine their own government. My God, that's a killing offense in Al-Qaeda's world. So we got back to our hotel, and there was a man that was known by the sister of the president of Mauritania. And she said, he's a good man, he's part of the UN, and she said he will take us he'll get us on the rescue ship going to Benghazi. We're going to take refugees to Benghazi. Well, hell, Benghazi was the head of the snake. We said, that's the last place we want to go. That's where this mess started. And she said, no, we've been calling Benghazi, and all the murderers and bad guys are over here killing folks in Tripoli. There's nobody left in Benghazi. And I said, what do we do after we get there? And she said, well, maybe we can try to get our way out to Egypt or someplace else. And that man was good to his word. He took us in his van, took us all the way through the 50 checkpoints to get through the port and onto this rescue ship. And we got on the rescue ship. And we were then 2 days of the worst 2 days you can imagine. It was hot. It was the late August in the Mediterranean.
It was a car carrier.
It was a car carrier.
It wasn't a people ship.
There were about 300 people on it, 2 bathrooms.
Was
The
it
sea was
immigration?
like this.
UN immigration ship.
There were only 2 bathrooms, and everybody was doing the Green Apple Quick Step. And, you could not find any place. The food that they had for us was moldy bread, hot water, and out-of-date fruit juice. And when you drank the fruit juice, you immediately had to find the WC. So it was 48 hours of hell. And the ship was like this, and sure enough, we got to Benghazi. And he promised us that when we got to Benghazi, he said, you do not want to go to the Egyptian refugee camp because Al-Qaeda will catch you there. And he said, so I'm going to make sure that they take you all, this was our group, was now down to 6, to the hotel in Benghazi, where the U.S. had an office, European Union had an office, etc. So we got, good to his word, we got into that hotel, and sure enough, there was a U.S. office there. There was a European Union office. Went up to that office to try to get help. The guy that was running that office couldn't even speak English. he was surprised to see Joanne and myself, and he said, there's no supposed to be no Americans here. I'm only here to help the rebels. I'm only here to interface with rebels. And I said, we need help. He said, I can't help you. So we then went to the European Union office, and the guy said, gosh, I wish I could help you, but you're not European Union, so, go pound sand. Well, he was polite. By the time we got downstairs, the people in the hotel were looking at this group of 6, and we didn't look like Al Qaeda. We were all pretty clean cut looking, except we hadn't had a bath or anything to eat in 5 or 6 days. But other than that, and we got there, and one of the hotel concierge called the top guy with the NTC. That was the phony government that the United States installed in Libya. And this was the number 3 guy in the NTC. He was the ranking man left in Benghazi. He sent his security guy over to see who this strange people were in the lobby. And when he saw the Bahraini prince and this woman from Mauritania and a couple of Americans, he called his boss and said, yeah, these are different guys. We need to help them. So he came over. But Benghazi did not yet have the word that we were on their kill list. They were still looking for us back in Tripoli.
Communications were down between the 2 cities. That's another thing that helped us.
And when he came in, he was well dressed, suit and tie, perfect English, educated man. We happened to know some of his, he told us what tribe he was with. There's a tribal community. 98% of everybody in Libya is tribes, and we got real close with the tribes. So we knew people in his tribe. We had friends with people in his tribe, and we discussed those with him, and after we had a little discussion with him, he decided we were all right, and he said, well, y'all need to get out of Benghazi. And he said, there's a plane leaving tonight from Benghazi to Tunis to take injured soldiers there, not Libyan soldiers, but Al Qaeda and rebels. And he said, I'll get you on that plane. I'll have my security guy walk you through. Now, that's the third miracle, because if that guy had known who we were, he probably would have pulled out his machete and chopped our heads off right there. But, that was the third miracle, and sure enough, we did get out of Benghazi, got to Tunis. And after we got there, of course, the government was still not willing to help us. They didn't have any way to arrange to get us back to the United States. They didn't even want to talk to us. Well, you have to stay there for 4 or 5 days. It was the end of August. It was Banker's Holiday. It was all these things, end of Ramadan, and you all shouldn't be there in the first place.
So after we got to Tunisia, we decided we'd get our own selves out. We didn't have any money. Our credit cards were gone. We got we got a hold of my daughter. There was a hotel we were at. The sister of the president of Mauritania, once she got to Tunisia, she had help. She knew people there. People immediately showed up to help her, and she helped us with some finance, not much, just she helped us, bought a hotel room for us. $200, yeah. And she took us out to eat, but we'd taken her out to eat in Benghazi. So we called my family, my daughter, and they bought a ticket for us to Rome. From Tunisia, Rome, it was like $90. You could go fly there. Yeah, it's not very far away. But when we got there, we had enough miles on British Air to get ourselves home. But we didn't have a ticket, and we couldn't get to the gate. So what we did was we went the opposite way. Most people have to have a ticket to get into the security. Well, they just let us through with our passport. They made a mistake, is what they did. And we went up to the British Airways lounge. And they were real hard on us. They weren't going to help us at all until they figured out who we were, finally. Jimmy made a point of telling them that we should be dead, and they finally said, oh my gosh. So they got us on the next plane out. Even though all their plane, every single one of them was full, they got us in 3 hours, they got us out. And you should tell the little story of the luggage guy.
A guy that worked by the hour, he handled luggage in the luggage storage area. And you had to pay your storage fee in advance. And this place was about a mile from the gate. It's a huge airport, about a mile from the gate where we would be departing. And we had a lot of luggage. And he said, well, it's going to be so much. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't have the money. I said, if you'll let me try to get the money from our kids in the United States, I said, I can have it. He said, why don't you have any money? And I told him the story, and he gave me €100. The storage was about 10 euro. And he gave me €100, and I said, I only need 10. He said, no, you may be hungry, take this. And I said, let me have your name and address. And I said, as soon as I get back to the state. He said, no, you've been through enough. He said, this is my gift to you and your wife.
I'm surprised how many nice people there are in the world.
And but when we got back, I was Joanne had secreted on her person 200 gigabytes of
Little hard
all
drive.
the NATO atrocities. We had videos of them blowing up hospitals and water treatment plants and power plants and
We've been in morgues.
yeah, and
We've been everywhere.
terrible things. And in the Houston airport, they let her go right on through, and they stopped me. And they held me for 3 hours, interrogating me. 3 different agencies. The guy that was speaking to me had 3 screens in front of him, and I was getting questions from all these different agencies. How did you get to Libya? Who paid your expenses? How did you get back? How in the hell did you get out of the hands of Al Qaeda? They took the lining out of my luggage. They went through everything. Thank goodness they didn't do a cavity search. But other than that, I was a bad guy. And of course, I was so glad to be in the United States. Joanne and I went back, and we didn't realize it until the intelligence agency started attacking us that I had been blacklisted at that time. And they had blocked every single opportunity we would ever have because we were bad guys and had seen the atrocities of what happened in Libya. And when we got back, when we got into Houston after a day or so, Joanne started calling all the politicians in Washington, D.C., in Austin, every place, trying to tell them how wrong we were in Libya and what we'd gone through and what we knew was wrong. And Al Qaeda was there, and we turned over that country to Al Qaeda because they now owned that country. They had all the money of Al Qaeda. And the Al Qaeda was real brazen in their declarations in Libya that we now own this country, we have all the money, we're going to have the resources to take over the world. We will affect a caliphate. And John McCain, that sorry piece of garbage, was right in there holding arm in arm with these Al Qaeda guys, telling them that they were his best friends. These are my heroes. He did that in Libya the first week of the fighting there. He did it 2 or 3 times after that, and then he went into Syria. The first week they were another league of Al Qaeda were the ones that were attacking in Syria, and he did the same thing there. These are my friends, my buddies. They gave him an award. Al Qaeda gave John McCain an award, and he's standing there grinning like an idiot, receiving an award from these murdering psychopath Al Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood and Ansar al-Sharia.
Yeah, well, but the man who's giving him an award is named Abdul Hakim Belhaj. Now, Belhaj is a very famous Al Qaeda leader. He was in Guantanamo. He was turned over to Libya from Guantanamo because he was Libyan, but he was released by NATO and the people that came in. They opened all the prisons and let everybody out. And then for John McCain to go in, and he was with Lindsey Graham at that time and Richard Blumenthal, another senator, a Democratic senator. They were all standing in Tripoli receiving an award from Abdul Hakim Belhaj, who is now in charge of security in Tripoli, in charge of illegal prisons and all kinds of things.
Now then, we will tell you that we became real close with the tribes of Libya when we were in Tripoli. Everybody was trying to offer us business, and I said, as long as there's blood running in the streets, we will not do any business. And we didn't. And we went to all the tribal functions we could because the Libyan government was a burned card, but the tribes weren't. And so here were 2 white faces every time the cameras would roll. Joanne and I were there trying to bring some presence to the tribes, try to get some recognition by the international press for the tribes so that there could be some kind of a shadow government buffeting all the bad publicity that the Libyans had. And the Libyans were so innocent, they said that the truth and their God would win the battle for them. And we said, no, when you've got a publicity machine working against you, spending $10 million or more a day, you've got to do something to try to counteract that. And they wouldn't do it. So Joanne and I took it upon ourselves, and we took the company funds that were in reserve, and we brought up 38 videos, some of the most horrible videos you can ever imagine. A few of them are on our DVD. We joined hands with a guy called Federal Jack, and we loaded these 38 videos up, and almost immediately the servers were overloaded, burned them up. Loaded them up again, blew them up. 3rd time, got them on there. Finally, in the end, we had to write new software that kept those videos on the site because they were being pulled off. Our videos were seen by 275 million people in 60 countries, and it was translated into 9 languages. So we did a pretty good PR job. However, that brought the wrath of this government and the illegal folks that are running this country. And I'm not talking about just Obama. I'm talking about as far back as you can go, the toilet paper makers. And so they have been attacking us. And beginning, we knew about 9/11 in Benghazi. We knew it was going to happen 6 or 8 weeks ahead of time. Nobody would listen to us. Nobody. We didn't know specifically they were going to go in there and kill Chris Stevens, but we knew they were going to attack U.S. properties in Libya, in Yemen, in Egypt, because the tribal leaders have spies in every single cell in Libya. They want their country back. So they've got spies throughout Libya. And finally, Dr. Jerome Corsi for WorldNet Daily started writing articles based on the information we provided him. He's now written 24 articles based on our information. 3 of the documents we provided him that came from the tribal leaders have been read in the congressional record. One of them, that Morsi was head of Ansar al-Sharia and had organized and financed the attack on the Benghazi compound. That's in the congressional record, and that was brought forward by us. Morsi, the now exile, or now
He's in trial.
yeah, he's in trial for his life. The second one, the 14 top leaders of Muslim Brotherhood walked in the U.S. Embassy in Cairo and received cash payments of $650,000 to $850,000 each. Cash payments. They signed for it. That document we provided to Corsi, and it was read in the congressional record. The third one was the security report written on the activities of Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood, Ansar al-Sharia, all those bad guys. That's a
In Tripoli.
Yeah,
That's
how many?
a 250-page.
250-page report. That's been read in the library, in the congressional record. So we've been effective in putting information in the hands of the government. The problem is they're just not doing anything about it. And finally, about 9 months ago, by a woman called Tara Dahl, who was Michelle Bachmann's aide, she started calling us to find information about us. She then fed 4 different intelligence agencies into our home. The last one was CIA, who was brought in with The Blaze, Lindbeck's production company. They came into our home. They were going to do a 2-hour documentary on us, and they were going to videotape everything. They spent 6 hours with us. 3 people that we verified were Blaze executives. And the woman that they brought in supposedly to provide us with security, because they told us we were in more danger from this government than any time we were in the hands of Al-Qaeda. And when they were going to come back to do the filming and editing and all this stuff, Joanne called them. They didn't call back. Instead, this woman named Nikki Barakal, CIA, spawn of the devil, called us back, and she said she's killed the documentary. It's too dangerous for Glenn Beck because we're already talking to intelligence agencies, and we need to continue doing that. And I said, the intelligence agencies are doing nothing with our information. They've said they send it up to the top and it's blocked. They said that the agenda, this is from the intelligence agencies, told us that the agenda in the United States is being set by Muslim Brotherhood. And they said, we're sorry, nothing that we can do to help you all at all, because by now they have destroyed our business. They've alienated us from everybody. And she said that she verified we had been not only blacklisted, but soft killed. And we said, what is that? And that's where we destroy you financially. We alienate you from your business associates. Your family won't talk to you. And I said, yeah, all that's been happening. And couldn't even get a job. I'm a car guy, and we were in such bad shape financially. We sold all our homes, all of our assets, our car collection, everything we had. And I'm a car guy. I couldn't get a job on a commission-only basis as a used car salesman. Now that's pretty sad. Nikki Barakal told us, she said, you need to forget about Libya and start your life over today, or you won't have a life. And I said, ma'am, that sounds like a threat. She said, you stand down and do exactly what I'm telling you, or you won't have a life. So after that, I told Joanna, I said, hell, we've got to go public. Nobody in this government is willing to do anything that's right. So we did start going public. We're on the radio probably 10 hours a week. We could be on the radio 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 hours a week. We've been doing seminars like this one all the way from here to Northern California and back.
We had a 2-hour sit down with Pete Sessions, thanks to Regina. She set that up for us. And he listened to us, and he listened to what we had to say, and he said, these intelligence agencies that you say came into your home, can you contact any of them? I said, yes, I have one of them on my phone. Regina was sitting there, and I called him, and he answered. And he said, hi, Joanne, how are you? And I said, I'm fine. I said, I'm sitting here with Congressman Pete Sessions. He would like to speak to you. He said, okay, So Congressman Sessions told him, I'm Pete Sessions, this is my private number, I want you to call me back in 15 minutes. That gives this man time to confirm that that's Pete Sessions' phone. So I called him back in 15 minutes, and he stepped outside and he said, okay, that guy's real, you guys are real, everything you said is real. And he said, I want to know why the U.S. did not make you their best friends, because you're bringing forward all this latitude, longitude activity of where Al-Qaeda is, where their guns are, where their camps are, where their movement. And he went back to Washington, D.C., he had a meeting with the head of the DIA, and they confirmed
That's Defense Intelligence
Agency. And Pete Sessions' exact words, he said, I want to tell you everything you told me. He said, and I repeat, everything you told me has been confirmed 100%. He said, but they said they hired you and you didn't want to work for them anymore. And I said, they hired us. They never hired us. They never did. I said, follow the money. Nobody's ever hired us. So he went back to him again, and they hemmed and hawed around about, they guess they'd made a mistake, but that we should really talk to the FBI. So that was just another
Now,
push-off.
we have tried to provide information to the FBI. You may be asking, how in the hell these people get all this intelligence? Because the tribal leaders have kept in touch with us. We talk to them every day.
There's 2 million.
They provide us with all the activities of all the radical Islamists in Libya, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Syria. And we have real-time information about what's going on. And we have tried to put that out. We try to put it out. We try to put it out. In the meantime, these intelligence agencies are soaking it up and doing nothing with it. And the tribal leaders have finally asked us or released us to go ahead and start bringing forward the key eyewitnesses. Because let me tell you what, you're looking at two folks that know everything about what happened in Benghazi. We know the 3 sorry pieces of garbage that coordinated the whole thing and directed the attack by their phone. Their families ratted them out because they were so ashamed of them. We have eyewitnesses that lived across the street from that Benghazi compound, and he's documented and detailed every single thing that's happened. We put him on a personal interview with Dr. Corsi about 2 weeks ago. Corsi's written the first article on his information. We had him on Joyce Riley's show, the Power Hour, and her producer said that was the most important show she had ever done. We had him. He's going to be on tomorrow, 15 minutes tomorrow night on Aaron Klein's show. And we have all the information about what went on in Benghazi, and the report the government released is just not there. It's not true. There were 2 cars that left Benghazi, 2 civilian cars with Libyan license plates. There was never a flag that flew on any of those buildings in that area, so it was not a political residence.
Not a diplomatic residence.
Not diplomatic. And the cars that they drove around were Libyan cars with Libyan license plates, not U.S. political plates.
What did he say? The Libyan people all know this is a CIA headquarters.
Yeah.
It's been here for a long time.
And in the very early minutes of the fighting, 2 cars left that front building, the front mansion. These were mansions. These are not funky little buildings. 2 cars left that. He described the cars and who was in them. Chris Stevens was not in those first 2 cars. He said, we can't figure out why Chris Stevens was not taken out of that building when those first 2 cars left. Question, where's the answer? In addition to that, the armored vehicles that supposedly came back in there from the other location where there's several mansions about 3/4 of a mile away, they came back in and did a little bit of an attack, etc. But the truth is not being brought forward by this government. And oh yeah, did you know that entire area was cordoned off, 5-kilometer circle?
So this was not spontaneous.
This was not spontaneous. And when they came in with their little banners about the video, they had their AK-47s with them. Now let me tell you how asinine this lie is. There are no movie theaters in Libya. There are no movie theaters in Libya. YouTube has not been allowed there since 2006. So would you please tell me how in the hell do you think that video was seen by anybody? Nobody in Libya has ever seen it. Now these are the truths. And for this government to continue to lie to us and kill people and continue to kill people, there are 128 mass graves in Libya full of black folks. They've been committing genocide on blacks through this revolution since the second week in February, and they announced that they were going to cleanse Libya of blacks because those were mercenaries brought in by Gaddafi. That's just not true. Libya is a colorblind country. 30 to 35% of all Libyans are black. And you go to any family in Libya and you see a rainbow of colors. there's black down to light beige and everything in between. There is no racism in Libya. And this mess of killing blacks, of the 500,000 that were killed, 200,000 of them were black. And they have been all, whenever they kill the Libyan soldiers, they'd shoot the beige guys in the back of the head, they would chop the heads off of the black guys. They'd cut them up and burn them. And these are guys that are trained by our CIA and educated by our CIA. They find these psychopathic so-and-sos, and those are the guys that are the junkyard dogs for the CIA. Now, this is a sad state of affairs when that's our country. And we were very, very substantial people. They've destroyed us. If they can destroy us, they can destroy anybody. The only way we're able to live, and we live in the homes of other people, we're homeless now. We had 3 real nice homes. We're homeless. We have little DVDs we sell at $10 a piece. We hope everybody buys 1 or 2 or a dozen, because that's the only way we're able to live. And God saved us with 3 miracles, and I think He did that because He knew we would tell our story and tell the truth. Because the people here need to know the truth. Now, Joanne's got some great news to tell you about Libya. This is after 3 years of them being blown all to hell.
Okay. The Libyans, there's 2 million in exile, 1 million homeless, and 2 million who live in fear every day from armed Islamic extremists, their gangs. And from no government. They have no government. They have no security. Well, over the past 3 years, they've been planning to take their country back. They want to take their country back from these Al-Qaeda. Libya is not a radical country, never has been. That's why the 2 million left, because they would have been killed or in prison. There's 30-some thousand people illegally in prison there. Many, many people have been tortured to death. Last night, they effected the beginning of taking their country back. They have now taken the South. The South is back under the green flag, under the flag of free Libya, of Libya who will sell their oil, help their people, and take care of their country. And they fully intend to take their country back in toto. And my hope is for them that they don't get any news that comes out that says these are bad guys and somebody goes and attacks them, because they are fighting our battle. They are fighting Al-Qaeda at this moment by themselves.
And in addition to that, right after 9/11, the Libyans brought forward a formal offer, the tribes of Libya brought forward a formal offer where they asked the United States to please stop supporting and funding and providing Al-Qaeda with weapons.
In their country.
In Libya. And they said, if you will stop supporting those bad guys, we will go into Libya. And we will eradicate all the fundamentalist Islamists in Libya. And then we will join hands with the tribes in every other country and eliminate these radical Islamists worldwide. That was a formal offer made to the U.S. government. Not one person ever responded to it. When we couldn't get anybody to respond, the tribal leader said, well, maybe we should have you all be in official capacity or something. So they appointed Joanne and myself as the official spokespersons for the tribes of Libya. We were honored to be able to try to bring that forward. But we're one of the few people, if not the only two, that have really been trying to put out the truth about Libya forever. And just today, the intelligence agencies have threatened us again. I guess they didn't figure we didn't know how to die or go crawl in a hole, because they told us to stop talking about the intelligence agencies and stop talking about what a bad person Tara Dahl was.
Stop
We
naming
don't
names.
know how to stop being truth tellers. We don't like being attacked by this government. We don't like them asking us to go crawl in a hole so good people of the world won't know what they're doing. So,
That's all.
Second Strike is gone. I want you all to please buy our DVDs. We need your help.
Self-defense.
Go to our website. We keep that updated all the time. There's a lot of videos on the Libyans to show you how sincere they were. They went and attacked the biggest stronghold of the Misrata Mafia, which is really the mafia, the bad guys in Libya forever. And they captured, you'll see it, I think it's on our website, probably they captured, looks like 250 tanks. So they're taking their weapons back. They're taking the weapons that the United States provided to Al-Qaeda through Qatar. And they plan to take back their country. We hope God's with them. We hope the United States stays the hell out of that, and that these people have a chance to get their lives back. Thank you all.
Repeat your website.
Yeah.
www.libyanwarthetruth.com. libyanwarthetruth.com.
DVDs are $10.
And our DVDs are $10.
We have some with us.
You know, now you get to ask questions, so, where's the, let me get the mic here. Who wants to be first? Alright.
Can you talk a little bit about the fake green square and some of the manufacturing of evidence in Egypt?
Oh, yeah. When we were in Tripoli during the time when the war was right before we got captured by Al Qaeda, we were with quite a few journalists. Some of them were actually good journalists. They were trying to put out the truth. Not very many, but a few. And there was a green square in Libya where all the Libyans gathered together to listen to people speak or to show support for their government or to protest.
That's
And-
where the 2 million people showed up that
Yeah.
one day when we were there to
Yeah,
view it.
July 1st, 2011. We were sitting we were actually riding in a car with a journalist, and he said, "You see that green square over there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's one just like it in Qatar, if you want to say it that way." And I said, "What?" He said, "There's an exact mock-up." He said, "I was there, and they had all the rebels in it." Saying, you know, none of them were Libyan people. They were all dressed like rebels and carrying a Libyan flag and saying, showing the world that all these Libyans are behind this war. He said that it was a complete mock-up. He said it was a movie.
Can you say wag the dog?
Yeah, it was shocking.
Yes, sir.
I believe you were going to offer some solutions.
Yeah.
Something we can do, maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, talk to every politician you know and get us out of the UN and NATO. Because the One World Order folks, NATO is their vehicle. And this blow up of Libya was executed at the instruction of the United States, but by UN first and then NATO afterwards. And they're putting blue flags on our boys, on our soldiers' uniforms. They're making them wear blue hats. They're abusing our military. So get rid of NATO and UN. That is the operative instrument for the One World Order, folks.
How can I do that?
You call every politician you know, call your congressman, call your senators, call your local folks.
And educate people.
Pinckney.
Yeah, talk to people, educate people, because each person can educate someone. You know,
What Reverend Pinckney.
yeah. If you go to YouTube and listen to Reverend Larry Pinckney talk about One World Order, he was one of the founders of the Black Panther group. And you would think, you know, these are radicals. No, what he was talking about, he was empower the people, not just the black people, but all the people. So you need to go listen to him. He's a very eloquent speaker. He was on Alex Jones. They taped him for 2 hours, and it's on YouTube.
What was his slogan?
Oh, each one reach one, each one teach one. That's his slogan.
That's how you do it.
Yes, hello.
Yes,
I
sir.
know that you know Susan Lindau. And
Mhm.
she was an asset of the CIA in charge of Libya and Iraq.
Mhm.
And she had a run-in with, almost locked up on a military base for a year. What's her take on this whole business with the CIA? I mean, are they just a total
Sure
rogue
they are.
operation?
Sure they are. In fact, Susan was the person we were feeding all the information when we were in Libya. We were feeding it to her because we're not writers. We're not publicists. You know, we're business people. We're way out of our
She said,
comfort zone. But she wrote a lot of really good articles based on information. She's the one that told us what was going on in the CIA.
she says NATO and the CIA are completely rogue now. The CIA has no oversight now. They do whatever they want.
Is that all?
Well, there should be more, I'm sure. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
I happen to have read Susan Lindauer's book as well.
Microphone.
I happen to have read Susan Lindauer's book as well, and she was in Carswell,
Yeah.
prison over here in Fort Worth.
For a year.
I remembered her saying in the book that it was really, really important to speak out, that was sort of a protection that you have.
Yes.
Get as much information as you can out there. But, you know, you said you had a daughter. Are you worried about your children?
Our
or-
children won't speak to us anymore. They're afraid to talk to us. They're afraid their husbands get fired. Listen, we had a joint venture with the prince in Kuwait on a $1 billion project. And he stopped talking to us a year ago this month. No, 2 years ago this month. And I ran him up one side and down the other, and I said, you know, how's this a way to do business? And finally, our long time friend Sadiq, who's about 4th echelon royal family in Kuwait, he said, Jimmy, you know, it's political. And I said, Sadiq, what's political? He said, well, you know, it's about Libya. And I said, hell, Libya's finished. Libya destroyed us. We lost everything in Libya. But I said, the business in Kuwait is still viable. We're the only ones that can do it. And he said, no, you don't understand. Your government's told the prince not to talk to you.
In Pete Sessions, when we were talking to Pete Sessions, we told him that story before we even finished it. He said, "Oh, they killed your Kuwait business."
Go
He said,
ahead,
"That's
can you
what they."
speak more directly to the mic?
Oh, okay. We were talking to Pete Sessions. Jimmy told him this story. We didn't finish it even. He said, "Oh, you will never get any business outside the United States. They'll kill everything." He said, "That's the way they do it." Who knows?
Now, also, David Dewhurst, I knew him about 30 years ago. I really put the cogeneration business in Texas I gave it legs. I got the first wheeling laws in the United States passed here in Texas, and I did it really with my own ideas and plans and everything using the purple laws. So really, David Dewhurst is worth a couple $100 million, but he got started with my help. So I asked him to help us. He used to be CIA. And he said, "What do you need?" And I said, "I need your buddies to get off my back." He said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "CIA." "Oh, I haven't been CIA for a long time." And I said, "Bull. Once CIA, always CIA." I said, "You need to get them off my back. You need to get the government to do what we've been doing, and that is getting proper intelligence about what's going on over there." And of course, we're waiting for his call back. All the politicians never call back.
A question about the CIA. Is everybody in the CIA bad, or are there rogue elements?
I don't think so. I think there's got to be some good folks, but I think the guys manufacturing or manipulating everything are bad guys. We know a guy named Vincenzo, and he's the head of the military division of the CIA. Did you know the head of military division? I didn't either. And he's paid by the post office as a post office inspector, and he claims to be the 5th most powerful man in the world. I was not happy to find out the CIA has a military division.
Yeah, I do believe there are some good people. Even the man that came to talk to us from the DIA, he came to our house quite a bit. He even shook his head one time. I heard him say under his breath, he said, "Oh, this is such a mistake what we did. We're doing the same thing we did in Iraq." And he said it, he didn't say it to me.
Yeah.
He just shook his head. He said, "We need to befriend the tribes. We need to understand their cultures. He said, "We don't do any of that."
They asked us, they said, "How in the world did you all ever get inside the tribes?" We've never been able to do
They
that.
gave us
Well,
14 questions.
it was easy because we treated the tribal guys with respect. We learned the way they did business. We didn't try to force our business techniques on them. And then we stood with them. And because of that, we've been adopted by the biggest tribe in Libya. We've been putting information out about what happened in Egypt as well. We got a call from one of the generals in Egypt, and he said, "You all have been so great about getting our story out because nobody will do it." And he said, "We want you to know that you all have a home here in Egypt." Believe me, we need someplace. We need safe haven someplace, but our choice is Libya and Egypt, Pretty scary.
Excuse me if you've already covered this, but to what extent do you think Gaddafi's backing of the gold-backed dinar and the Pan-African Union, which would have been opposed to NATO and the UN, served as the pretext or the rationale?
That was the number one kill point for him. And the bankers, the Rothschild group owns all the central banks in the world. So the games they play with currencies and everything, it's paper, it's toilet paper. And a gold-backed dinar for the continent of Africa would have destroyed the toilet paper bankers, would have destroyed them. So that was number one reason to kill him. Because if they exile him, his mouth would still work.
The really sad thing is that Gaddafi had a dream for Africa. He was a big African guy. He wanted to make Libya the gateway, and he wanted to bring Africa into the 21st century. He was tired of Africa suffering. And he did more first world activities in Africa than all the G20 countries have ever done. So he really got a bad rap about that.
Can you talk about Chris Stevens and the missiles?
Chris Stevens was, before he was ever ambassador, he was the gun runner for the CIA into Libya. And he was CIA. And they delivered in the first couple of weeks of the revolution, the U.S. delivered 20,000 man-pad rockets. They're the most sophisticated shoulder-mounted land-to-air rocket made. Has a real unique signature. And of course, not one was used in Libya. But now then, here's 20,000 airplanes Al-Qaeda can shoot down with U.S. missiles. So Chris Stevens was tasked to try to get those back for some time. And he actually had dinner that night. He was killed with a personal representative of the leader of Turkey. And he appealed to that guy thinks he's going to be the Khalifa when the caliphate goes into effect. That's the head of all the world as the Khalifa. And Chris Stevens was imploring him to use his influence to get those man-pad rockets back. And of course they told him no. And that Turkish representative went out the front door of that mansion, was taken in a fast car to the airport, put on a military plane, and when the plane sat down in Turkey, that's when they started attacking that compound. So Chris Stevens was always CIA, he was always a gun runner, and he thought these guys were his buddies. They had the group that was protecting that mansion and the other compound was also Al-Qaeda. It was Ansar al-Sharia, another name for them. They play this game. They change their name, and they think that that's going to confuse the intelligence agencies here, and it does. Go ahead.
One real interesting point that our eyewitness made was that people who lived around the compound were harassed daily by these, they called them February 17th group at Ansar al-Sharia. He said they harassed all the local people because they were always around, the security guards, but he said the day of the attack there was no security, none. He said, but the roads were cordoned off, my family couldn't get in, I was inside, they came to try to get me, for probably a 5-kilometer area. So this was a complete planned attack. And he said, you don't come to a protest with AK-47s and then come back with RPGs. He said, that's not really a protest.
I was amazed when I heard on the news that the rebels had in record time opened a central bank there in Libya. Can you explain that?
They did that in the first week. First time in the history of the world that a bunch of ragtag rebels are sophisticated enough to go open a central bank and got $1 billion deposited from Saudi Arabia in there. First week. This shows it was a bank deal. That money was used to pay off all the mercenaries that were coming in, and that $1 billion is actually $972 million, I think, was the net after the bank took out their little fee. And that money disappeared and was paid out to the 250,000 mercenaries almost immediately. And to the politicians.
Yes, politicians.
Yeah.
The Libyans have told us that they will produce these papers at some point when they get back inside their country, which they're doing now, that the U.S. and any other politicians that came to Benghazi during the start of the revolutionary problem,
To this day.
to this day, they get $10 million gift.
Every time they go to Benghazi.
John McCain's been there a number of times, Hillary Clinton, a lot of people have been there, but he said they get $10 million every time they come.
The only guy that ever listened to us and did anything about it was Dennis Kucinich. And Dennis Kucinich put forward 8 different, and Ron Paul a little bit too, that's true. But Dennis Kucinich put forward 8 pieces of legislature to take the United States to stop their involvement in the Libyan war, to take them out of the war, to defund the war. And of course he was rewarded by being redistricted by the Democrats, where he couldn't get elected dog catcher. So after 14 years of loyal service, he was taken out by his own party.
Well, actually, the banking was what I was going to ask more about, but the media is of course playing this like the World Wrestling Federation. These horrible Democrats, and Obama did all this stuff. And could you address maybe a little bit of that?
Listen, he's worse. He's worse than the rest of them. The guy's got his button on the drone kill list, and he loves war. He loves to kill people. But so does George Bush I, George Bush II, so did Clinton. Hillary Clinton, of course, got more blood on her hands than you can imagine. But listen, it's all Washington, D.C. Because we have been trying to give this information to everybody in Washington, D.C. Take the best Democrats, the best Republicans, anybody you want. We've called their office. We've gotten through their gatekeeper. We've tried to give them information. Oh, we'll call you right back. We'll set up a direct link with the Libyan tribal leaders. Not a one. Not a one. We brace them. We confront them. Pete Sessions, Regina absolutely was in his face until he finally had a 2-hour meeting with us, and then went and drew in the Defense Intelligence Agency in his office. The Defense Intelligence Agency said that's the first time ever they've had to pitch up in anybody's office. And then they lied to him, but that was his excuse. They passed us on to FBI, and so that's where we sit. No, FBI, we tried to provide them with information. Let me tell you the quality information we got. We got latitude and longitude of the Al-Qaeda training camps. They asked us for names of leaders of the Al-Qaeda in those areas. We gave them to them. We gave them the latitude and longitude of where those bastards spent the night, where their underground bunkers were, where they had the weapons, the routes they drove on. We had information, intelligence you all could not imagine. And we're not experts. We're business folks. Give me an oil well, I'll clean that thing up and make some more oil. I'll clean up a pipeline, sludge pit, chicken fat. I can do all that stuff. We're not in the intelligence business. And when the intelligence agencies, and this is something I'm going to tell you all what really pisses me off, excuse my French, I'm getting mad now. Those 4 intelligence agencies came into our home and gave us false names. We're giving them information. Those sorry bastards gave us phony names. Who in the hell are we? Why would anybody come into somebody's home and give them a false name? We're trying to help our government. Well, see, they don't look at us as trying to help them. We've got proof of atrocities. And they have been trying and trying and trying to get that 200 gigabytes of proof, because the only place that's damaging is here in the United States. The rest of the world knows how sorry the U.S. is. They know what the U.S. has been doing, killing leaders and wet work all over.
Okay. I want to say something, because this is something that Libyans gave us as intelligence that had nothing to do with them. They called us one Saturday night, I think it was, the 27th of April, and they said, this is top urgent, there's a ship, a steamship on the Mediterranean disguised as a fishing vessel, and it's full of weapons of mass destruction. It was sent from Al-Zawahiri, from Turkey, and it's going to the north corner of Libya, where it will be unloaded and met by the Muslim Brotherhood leader there. It will be taken out of Libya, across Egypt, and to go into by land to go into the Gaza Strip to be used against Israel. And he said, this is a big deal. They're all excited about receiving it. So you need to tell your people right now, somebody can do something. This has nothing to do with Libya, but we don't want to see any more innocent people ever harmed again.
Now this is Muslims protecting Jews. Does that fit?
Yeah. I called the intelligence agency that I had a phone number for. He wasn't there. I called the other one. The guy answered. He said, I can't give this information to any foreign government. I said, give it to Israel. They'll go pick up the ship. He said, no, it's against the law for me to do that. And I said, well, it's my information. You give me their number. I'll call them. I don't work for you guys. I'm a citizen. I can do it. And I shamed him into it. He finally, he called, and about 2 hours later, he called us back and he said, you know what? They sent me a smiley face, and they got the ship. And our Libyans told us, he said, the Muslim Brotherhood guys are running around like chickens with their head cut off. They can't get the ship to answer. They sent a boat out to find it. So that was actually in the news. They flipped the story a little bit. They said it was a ship going to Syria, which is not true, but they did get it. So we did something good.
Go ahead.
There you go. My question's kind of stopped after that.
Could you address the issue of Hillary Clinton making a trip to South Africa?
When Tripoli was mostly destroyed, a lot of the ambassadors and everybody that was left came to our hotel, because our hotel was the only one left with food and electricity and air conditioning and everything. And Dangor, who is a plenipotentiary ambassador from South Africa. A plenipotentiary is an ambassador that can sign a contract that binds that country. So a real powerful guy. And we had tea with him many times and coffee and visited with him, and Joanne asked him, she said, why in the world did South Africa join against Libya when South Africa and Libya were the 2 strongest countries in Africa, and you all worked together on so many things? He said, we didn't have a choice. Hillary Clinton came into South Africa and told us that if we didn't join hands in the fight against Libya, that we would have rebels in our own backyard. He said, it's like this woman has a closet full of rebels, she can drop down any place. Now we know that's true because our Kuwaitis told us the same thing several months earlier. We were trying to get the Kuwaitis to make a gift of a bunch of rescue equipment, Jaws of Life and stuff for Libya, because these buildings were getting blown up and people were trapped underneath and they had no rescue equipment at all. And so we asked the Kuwaitis, the royal family, to make a $10 million gift in this rescue equipment. So they offered to buy the rescue equipment, And the royal family upped the gift to $50 million, and then they contacted the State Department. And they said, we'd like to help the Libyans, all the Libyans, with rescue equipment. And they said, gee, that's great. We're processing all that money through Qatar. And they said, well, since you're so interested in helping Libya, the thing you better do right now is join hands with us in overthrowing Gaddafi and that government. And they said, well, we don't want to get in that. You will have rebels in your own backyard if you don't join us. So we have two different world leaders that have validated what that woman said. Evil.
Anyone else?
So, I was late and I missed the beginning, but
Buy
I
a
don't.
DVD.
Yeah. You can hear me?
Yeah.
My real question is, well, first of all, I think it's a typical story, is maybe not typical for you guys, but sort of it typifies, what just goes on in general in the government. And I don't think that you guys are responsible for a solution or anything, but I noticed that you said that, we should talk to our congressman. But I'm kind of, if you could help me to understand, did you have an experience that would make you feel like that's an effective methodology?
No, but if enough people call, we know that the people of the United States have stopped immigration and amnesty a dozen times. There have to be enough people that call them and give them a ration of shit that they will have to stop paying attention. It looks like Pete Sessions is not going to be reelected. It looks like David Dewhurst is out. And so, these things can't happen. But the problem is, when you have a government that is working outside the Constitution, and all these agreements are being signed by the United States of America Incorporated in Washington, D.C., rather than the Constitution of the United States, then there's a problem, because we have no voice in the ink. Our Constitution is being violated, but not really, because it's the ink doing all the business. So that's another can of worms.
Corporation, you mean?
Yeah.
That's what you mean by ink.
INC.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about passports being issued in Libya after the takeover?
Okay. Since October of 2011, Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda has owned the passport office in Libya. And they've got $500 billion or more, and they are issuing new passports. They're bringing in Al-Qaeda radicals from all over the world into Libya. They're training them. And those that speak real good English are being gifted a bank account in the United States with $4 to $5 million in it. They're being given a new Libyan name, a new Libyan passport, a permanent green card, multiple entry visas by the State Department of the United States. That's several hundred a month since October of 2011. They're going all over the United States. If that doesn't scare you to death, then nothing will. We told all the intelligence agencies about that, and we verified it from both sides, from the rebel side and from the tribal side, and that is true. And the guy that owns that passport office is one of the worst men that ever drew a breath. And several hundred a month are coming into the United States.
His name is Gaib.
Gaib is his name.
His brother was Al-Libi. Al-Libi was killed by a drone in Afghanistan. He was Osama bin Laden's right-hand man.
So, the intelligence agencies, when we've confronted them about that, they said, well, what should we do? And I said, it ought to be pretty damn easy to look at every Libyan that's come into the United States since October of 2011, and if they've got a bank account with $4 to $5 million in it, then waterboard the bastard until you find out who he works for. Well, we couldn't do that. That'd be profiling. So in the meantime, into our homes and our villages and our towns and our cities are several hundred a month of radical Islamist psychopathic bastards. Pardon my French. Yes, sir.
So what you're saying is that our wonderful, all-seeing, all-knowing NSA can't figure out what these people radicals from Libya are doing.
No, they're not interested in them. They're interested in you. They're not interested in the bad guys. They're interested in you.
Well, I think we've all figured that one out, actually. Okay.
makes us crazy. We've seen what they can do. And you don't have to forgive me. I'm very angry.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm very angry.
Can I put just a last question?
Sure.
Given your implication, which is that the government is surrounded by rogue institutions, what do you think the future of America is? Because I can't believe that China, Russia, etc., are going to put up to this.
They're not. They did in Libya. We kept thinking that Russia and China would step forward and stop it because, you know, Libya was really it was a peaceful place. Of all those countries, and we did business all over the world, of all those countries, that was one of the safer places.
Libya never attacked any. Libya has never attacked any.
And Russia stepped forward on Syria. That was another political event. Syria had a big pool of natural gas under it. Russia had financed the pipeline. This would have given Russia 60% of all the natural gas sales to Europe. Qatar was promised the natural gas sales to Europe because it has a huge bounty of natural gas under it. So, this was a political event.
Several of us here participated in several anti-war rallies when we looked like the government and NATO were about to attack Syria on that phony pretext about the chemical attack. Do you think, and I realize this may not be something you have any expertise in, do you think that public opposition had anything to do with the delay, at least the delay in that attack?
No, I'll tell you what happened. And we have the proof of that gas coming from Saudi Arabia being delivered to the Syrian rebels. We have the videos of them receiving it. We have the videos of them shooting it into Damascus. But for whatever reason, the guys that control our government were bound and determined to get in a war with Syria. So on the 3rd of September, and you can find this on our website, there's validation from half dozen news sources. A bunch of things happened on the 3rd of September. First, 2 Marine captains were fired. 2 submarine captains. There was the general that was in charge of the nuclear storage and weapons in the United States. 3 nuclear devices were stolen out of a storage facility here in Texas. One of them was taken to South Carolina, and Graham said, why, even a nuclear device could blow up here in South Carolina. The military guy that got that device blew it up out in the ocean, and he's been fired. The other thing that happened is on that day, this is the 3rd of September, off the southeast corner of Spain, in the Mediterranean, a U.S. submarine fired 2 rockets, 2 ballistic missiles at Damascus, and Russia shot them down. And after about 2 hours, Putin came forward and told the media to stop broadcasting this story because he was in very serious negotiations with the United States, peace negotiations. So, you know, they're going to do whatever to get a war started because it's not about the United States, not about the people, it's about their control, and this is a sickening thing.
One has the feeling that there's some reason other than just wanting a third world war that some of these sick bastards running the show are trying to get something started. Are we headed into economic collapse?
Of course we are. They have, you know, there's the story Glenn Beck's been pushing about the gold has disappeared out of the storage facilities. Supposedly the gold that belongs to all the world countries was in safe haven here in the United States. It's not. But something everybody needs to realize that all the central banks in the world, all of them, belong to the Rothschild Group. The Rothschild Group is One World Order, Bilderbergs, etc., etc. They have different names, but they own all the central banks. So if they destroy the dollar, they own the next currency that's going to float to the surface. In the meantime, all the wealth of all of us has disappeared. So they're running the price of gold down, so all those faint of heart will sell their gold. And then when they get the gold down as cheap as they can get it, then they'll crash the dollar, and, you know, what happens? So they have already got that train rolling downhill for the destruction of the United States. And something that you all don't know, but you ought to go look up, the United States Treasury has underwritten non-paying third world debt to the tune of $125 trillion. And that's not a contingent liability, that's an actual liability. So our debt is more than $140 trillion. So we're already destroyed. It's all that stuff. No, it's on balance sheet. You just have to find it. These are the derivatives that have been trying to be regulated for a long time. So we owe $140 trillion. That's not a contingent liability, that's a direct liability. It's not like Medicare, Social Security, anything. This is a direct obligation, non-paying notes that we've guaranteed. Yes, sir.
What about the three countries that have run the Rothschild banking system out of their countries, Iceland, Hungary, and Russia? Does that seem to project a brighter future for the world?
It bodes well. It bodes well, but you know, you can see what these guys do. They are godless people. They do things that are not for the benefit of anybody. And you know, no politician in the United States, not any politician in the United States, is voting with any fear of retribution from God. And that's a problem, because what is happening is not for the benefit of the people of the United States. We all know that. We see it. We just bury our heads in the sand. And we have no politician that we found yet that's willing to stand up for the people of the United States.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So who wants to agree or disagree with the speaker, add anything they want to put? It's your turn. Who's first? There's bound to be somebody up here. Want to say something? No? Who wants to be first? I can't believe this. You've done such a terrific speech, nobody has anything to say.
That's a tough one to follow. I wasn't here for the announcements. I want to announce something slightly off subject, but it's quick. On Monday morning, we're marching in the MLK parade, Martin Luther King celebration parade. So if anybody wants to join us, give me your email and I'll give you all the information about that. Now, getting back to this talk, I'm going to make a little comment since we're not flooded with people yet. Maybe they'll want to say something to me. This is so interesting to me, because I've been coming to here for years trying to get people to listen to me, and they won't. I bring up subjects I think are similar in that they're kind of unbelievable, and that we have a shadow government, a rogue government, and things like this. And of course, I'm just a third-tier internet reflector. Here you have somebody that's much closer to the real deal. So I've been dismissed, but I just want to make sure that before you dismiss what you heard tonight out of hand, before you just forget it, you question yourself, your motives, and maybe listen to how the information dovetails with the information I've been trying to bring up. The things I bring up, I try to discipline myself to things that don't require a master's degree. It's like, basically, it's like if you put up with this, you're asking for trouble. And we've had trouble since then. In the last 6 or 7 years, we've seen the banker bailouts. We've seen just every kind of symptom that this country is under threat. My understanding is, when I grew up in this country, was that we were number one. We were leaders in technology. The world looked up to us. We had ridiculously dominant military. Immigration people wanted to come here, and all of a sudden, overnight, we can't have an economy. We're just like, we're beset upon, and they come up with this weird Al Qaeda boogeyman, and people accept it. We can't accept it anymore, and this is one more reason. So don't forget Martin Luther King. Come to me, and I'll give me your email. And the other thing is, this is black and white in one way. You either believe them or not. I mean, if you don't believe them, these people are really brazen liars. For what reason, I can't even quite figure out. But so you have an obligation to take this a little more seriously than a lot of these meetings we've had before. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to be next? Ray? No? Okay, come on up here.
Well, I have to give you something to do a rebuttal against here, so I don't know if this qualifies, but we have, or four, we have several voices coming out, Susan Lindauer being one of them, just amazing information coming from her. And then Cbell Edmonds. And then recently, one person emerges on the scene, Dr. Jim Garrow. And I guess if you have any time left at all, if no one else is going to comment, maybe in a rebuttal you could discuss those individuals, what you know about them, corroborating or comments.
You know,
Go ahead, Stephen.
Well,
Before he forgets.
before I forget, go ahead. We get the last word.
what I'd really rather do is deal in truths that we know. We can draw a straight line about what we know, what we've seen, what we've documented. We've been validated by everybody, the foreign intelligence agencies. If we had said anything wrong, believe me, they would have thrown us in jail so far you couldn't shoot beans to us with a 30-30. It would be much handier for them to throw us in jail than it would be to suffer our exposure. And as I said, they just threatened us again last night. So, you know, we know what we know. I don't know what the rest of them I know. I know about Susan Lindauer. She gave us a lot of information, and she published a lot of articles on the information we provided her when we were in Libya. But, yeah, NATO Gone Rogue, and a lot of her stories are real good. The thing is, you get a lot of information from folks that are close to the truth or near the truth or whatever, you know. What we are is we are eyewitnesses. We are the truth. And I can speak about that 100%. I know a lot of other good folks are out there, you know, but I'd really rather concentrate on what we know and what we do and what we saw. And God bless all the folks that are trying to get the truth out.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay, first of all, firsthand, I've seen some of the stuff that they're talking about. I have personally tried to contact these congressmen, and they give you the first time, they'll listen to you, and then they close the door, which is very consistent in what they do. They don't ever tell you you're lying or anything like that. They just don't answer. They'll say they're going to call you back. They don't call back. It's just a cold shoulder that they think you're just going to give up. Well, these people have tenacity. Well, and I'm really proud and I'm glad to know that. You know, totally. Their DVD is really well done. It has a paper that comes with it that shows if you want to avoid looking at all the graphic stuff that they have on there, which is only some of it. Some people need to see that to really believe it. You know, listening to the mother where her son had just terrible stuff and whatever. I don't necessarily want to watch that. So the other stuff I find very interesting, especially the fact-finding mission where they went into Tripoli and they were given that job, and then a documentary was made, and all that report is on there, and Dennis Kucinich is on there also during an interview. So there is so much trail to go back with them. But, you know, someone had said, what can we do? Well, we can't give up, I don't think. We can keep trying. Doesn't mean it's really going to work because it's daunting. You know, I'm the one that had 3 times tried to get a hold of Pete Sessions, and he doesn't make himself very available because he doesn't want to. And he's an elected official, but he's a candidate right now. So you have a little bit more opportunity because he's going to be fundraising, you know? Well, you can kind of follow him and trail him in the parking lot or something and just try to shame him. Have a camera with you. Put it on YouTube. You know, you can say, what can you do? It might be true, but we got to keep trying because you never know what might click. You know, some of these YouTubes go viral and all that stuff. It might be that little last edge that you have that could break something open and make a difference, you know? Because this can't go on, you know? They're trying to bomb Syria. Now, I was out there with Monty and Hank and several of us, and we did sine wave. I think it does make a difference. I think some of the things are at least put off a little bit when they see there's opposition and there's going to be a little bit more harder to do than what, you know, their first plan was. So I do believe we need to, you know, be visible and keep bombarding them with these, because you know, the Syria people were going to be bombed too, and that was really sad. And then what do? You feel bad, but did you try? So, anyways, these DVDs are well worth $10, and I hope you support them. And they're going to be around for a little while longer. In February, I'm hoping to bring, I know I'm bringing, Joyce Riley. She's a talk radio host from The Power Hour. She's awesome. She talks about the depleted uranium issue. She's a whistleblower. And this is what I call them, is they're whistleblowers. And we need to support whistleblowers. They stick their neck out, and then we need to at least do something, you know, to help them. And Joyce Riley, we're going to bring her to Dallas in February sometime. We'll have the Moriartys there and a couple other people that have been whistleblowers about different things, and we'll have a Unite Day, and I'll let you guys know about it. Okay, thank you. Activists for Truth. Look us up too. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I think one of the most significant things I've seen on YouTube is a short clip from a meeting of the Council on Foreign Relations where Zbigniew Brzezinski is addressing them and stating that one of the largest or one of the biggest problems that we are facing today is worldwide awakening. Now, if that's not an admission of guilt of him and that group, I don't know what is. And that is what is happening, and little groups like this today are having far more profound influence upon humanity than we would ever dream. If you read the book, The 100th Monkey, you will realize that only 3 to 5% of the population ever carries anything. The American Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and so forth. Read The 100th Monkey. It's illuminating. Every thought that we have, even though we think our thinking is private, goes out into human consciousness. People feel your thoughts. So hold your thoughts about everything that we need to see happen in this world as being guided by our Creator, by divine love. And we need to project that in all of our thinking, not hate these people, because then we just add to something that they use, is negative feelings. I, for many years, I started as a little kid, why Daddy, why is that, and so forth. I've always had to know as much as I could find out about the truth in anything. Why the lawnmower wasn't working, for instance. And as a result, I got into a lot of investigation in areas where even my own brother-in-law, who had a degree from MIT in architecture, very wealthy and educated person, said lovingly one day, Albert, you really need to go find a psychiatrist. Because I believed in conspiracies, and I believed that there are aliens inhabiting this universe prolifically, and it is absolutely true. I've had it clearly stated to me from people in intelligence services. These are the kinds of things that people just don't want to hear because it's uncomfortable. If you are not uncomfortable today, you're sound asleep. You need to get uncomfortable. You need to probe the truth. The word courage, the quality of courage, has no meaning without fear. Courage is measured by the degree of fear it overcomes. And we need to all become courageous people. Now, how are we going to measure our courage? Probe into things that are uncomfortable, that we don't personally believe in. If you were not there, if you were not on the scene, then you don't know. It's a belief on every single thing that you are told if you were not there. So investigate, investigate, investigate. Evaluate, evaluate, evaluate. I've said numerous times here that every degree of emotion necessarily alters one's perception of reality. So take those emotions courageously and push them to the side and think clearly and logically through all of these issues and become more and more active, contacting our people in Washington and put a landslide of pressure on them. Otherwise, we will have to have some other form of a revolution of consciousness, which maybe we don't want to have. But in any event, we are all important. Our ideas are important. If you read the book The Secret or look at the DVD, you will see how important it is what we hold in our thoughts and our feelings actually tends to project a lot of our future. And we need to do that not only for ourselves and our families and communities, but for the whole world, because we are all one. And these New World Order people are gaining on us because they're keeping us all divided up into religions, into languages, into nationalities, into political groups, and they are like, they herd us like cattle, and they're smart enough to make us stupid enough to go to the slaughterhouse ourselves with wars, famines, and pestilences, all of which are planned events. I've had that clearly stated to me from people who've been decades in the CIA. In any event, I could go on and on too, but everything you think is important, so make it good.
John Beasley, go ahead. You got 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, the CIA was founded by Harry Truman in about 1947. It's been playing these sorts of games ever since. There was a book written by John Stockwell, who's a Texan, called the Praetorian Guard. Basically, what the CIA is really a protection, a Praetorian Guard, for the major international corporations. That's what they actually protected them from any opposition. So what we have is international cartels that are protected by the CIA. That's the way it works. That's the way this capitalist system has progressed. Now, I've been looking into all these conspiracy theories, and I met with a friend of mine just before Christmas, and I'm going to write another book with him. I wrote Sabotaging America, but really my view is, the bottom line is that my book would be titled Sabotaging Democracy, because that's what we've seen. So now, speaking the truth to power will always cause you pain. But really, the solution is if we have the courage as a country, as Western nations, to speak truth to power. But this is an example, really, of when you speak truth to power, you're squashed down. Now, in terms of what's gone on from the 50s and 60s and now into the 21st century, was never unknown in Europe. We knew what the CIA was up to. We knew that Arbenz in Nicaragua was assassinated by the CIA on behalf of United Fruit. We knew all these things. Apparently, most Americans didn't know, but now they're gradually finding out. And I'm sorry that it's so late, and I don't know what they can do, because basically the corporations have got so much money and they're so powerful, they've bought the political class. Really, both parties. So, that's why you call them up, and they don't want it because they're bought and paid for. Now, we all know it. We all know it. Yet, so when people that come along that are honest in politics, no one listens to them. And you have this huge media machine that every day of the week pours out lies to the public in America and Europe, and people buy it. Now, people who think, can see this. The problem is the population at large aren't hurting enough to start to think. I don't know what you can do. I mean, I really don't. I write books, I speak here and there. I've been speaking about my American friends. When I began speaking to them back in the late 70s, would not believe, oh, so you're just anti-American, Well, gradually, they've come to understand, actually. And so it's, in fact, Bill Baldwin, who was the most right-wing guy in the 70s, I knew, in fact. Now he's editing my book, and he wants to know more. And really, what's happening is truly unbelievable. I really don't know what you can do. All I can say to people is education. Once the people are educated, and really, I have two friends who are historians, And I'm saying, look, history is totally mistaught. You really need to teach socio-economic history. You know, what's happening to real people by real events. And when you know that, then I think you can see through all this subterfuge and nonsense. You know, and I truly feel sorry for what, you know, I bought your video the other week and I watched it, and it rings true because this had happened, you know, it happened in the 50s and 60s and goes on and on. And, you know, unless people en masse rise up and vote for people that have integrity, and I talked about the country needing noblesse oblige. Well, we need people who care about the country, who care about people. You know, there's more things in life than money. We all die in the end. Do we really want, does America really want to go down in history as a country that went around leaving a trail of wreckage around the world?
Exactly.
I mean, those clowns from Lyndon LaRouche, at least the British Empire, you know, had an empire, but left something good behind. They left cities, they left, you know, buildings, they left governments, education. They left something. They weren't totally rapacious, but what I see the CIA doing is totally rapacious. It's repugnant, and I think, and I believe they're immoral, and I think, and I've said this before. Not only are they economically crazy, but these people are immoral, and that's what I think the American people would respond to, is this immorality. It's what Albert said here. It's an immoral, you know. So, you know, that's what I would do. I would attack them on moral grounds as well as anything else, because this is immoral, it's wrong, and it cannot last. The world, you know, in the end, morality, you know, in the history, if you read it, moral things do happen in the long run. But as Keane said, in the long run, we're all dead.
Okay, who's next? Anyone else? Now we're running out of time.
I'll be brief. I'm not a total believer in your philosophy because I haven't heard it before, but I'm definitely open to the ideas, and I appreciate you coming and talking to us. And I don't know any about you all except for Hank and Mara. I'm an aquaponics systems designer, and I do preparedness training for growing your own food and things like that. And I think that when the dinosaurs fell, the mice eventually took over, and that's what's going to happen. We are in the late stages of an empire, and perhaps the last capitalist empire for a while. And if you want to get ready, if you want to fight this, you can, but I don't, you know, I see a lot of people, they want to fight it, but I don't see any really effective methods. So I think it's fight or flight, and I'm taking the latter.
I guess I'm the last man standing. First of all, I want to thank our speakers tonight. I think they did a terrific job. They opened our minds to what has to be done, etc. My own view, for what it's worth, we've got a government that's our government today. We get the best Congress money can buy. That's our problem. That's our real problem. We've got congressmen, they're owned and operated by money. And as a result, that's why they act the way they do. That's why they don't challenge the people that they should challenge. We got corporations controlling government. By definition, that's what fascism is. It's corporations controlling government. That's what's happened in our country, and we have to change that. And before we can change anything else, we have to change that, because nothing else is going to happen unless we change that. So in my view, maybe we need to get Congress to act in its own self-interest to instruct the Federal Communications Commission to require the media to provide sufficient free airtime, the airways are free, for federal candidates in general elections to air their views. If you did that, it'd change everything. People would, the congressmen, they represent the people that are elected them instead of the people trying to buy their vote in Washington. And then they might change some other things, such as maybe putting some tariffs on corporations that are producing everything overseas and selling it here, because they're doing that to get cheap labor, and they're ruining all the labor in this country as a result. That's number two. Number three, we might shorten the workday, because that's been going on since the Industrial Revolution. We can't do that. We can't provide jobs for our people because they're not there. They're being eradicated every day. So this has to happen. And our biggest problem, and I'll just center it, is, in my view, is that we got too much money controlling Congress. That has to change. And I think that that would do wonders to change everything, to get in the right direction, start doing the right thing in this world. It might even take our banking industry and straighten it out, you know. Anyway, that's part of the problem. But now our speaker gets to comment on a comment and close this wonderful meeting, so both of our speakers. They get the last word. You both get the last word, whatever you want to say.
Well, thank you all for being so kind to let us speak here tonight. Our information is gripping. It's not very pleasant to hear. Believe me, it wasn't pleasant to live through, and it continues for us every day. We would ask that all of you keep us in your prayers, because we're alive because of God's hands in saving us 3 times in Libya. We've had our guardian angels help us ever since then. I didn't tell you much about it before, but the CIA tried to install pornography on our DVDs the first time, and then yes ma'am, and then they had the police to come in and arrest us behind that. Thank God we got the DVDs early, and they were pornography, and we ground them up. But I mean, every dirty trick you can imagine has happened. Keep us in your prayers. Think about what we said. It's not pleasant to hear, but believe me, go investigate. You'll find a lot of bad things going on out there. God bless you all.
I'd like to say thank you for having us. Our story is gripping, but for me, I work with the Libyans every day. They're real people. They have families, they have children, they have loved ones, and they have dreams and hopes. And like many countries that have been destroyed, they are working to get their lives back. And please don't believe anything that's written in the media that says that the Libyan people that are coming in to take their country back are bad people. They're fighting the good fight. They're fighting to kill Al-Qaeda that's there. And I ask that you pray for them and pray for us. And thank you so much for having us.
Well, just so you know, they kick us out here at 9 o'clock. That's when they close. So we're going to reconstitute down at Starbucks down the corner. Our speaker is welcome. Camaraderie, they're open at 11. They kick us out of there then. But anyway, we're good till then. So just so you know, we'll be down at Starbucks down the street. And our speaker is more than welcome to come. Let's do it.
Never had time.